That night I was just a tired taxi driver trying to take my daughter home. The rain was falling. The streets of Boston were almost empty. Then a billionaire heiress stepped into my car. Seconds later, she stopped breathing, in the back seat, right beside my little girl. I had only one choice to save her life. What happened after that single moment changed everything. Because the next morning, the most powerful people in the city were standing at my door, and what that billionaire woman did next shocked everyone. Stay with me until the end, because this story proves that one moment of courage can change an entire life. The night smelled like rain and gasoline. Streetlights stretched long shadows across the empty Boston road. I tightened my hands around the steering wheel of my old taxi. My daughter, Lily, sat in the back seat finishing her homework. Her small voice filled the quiet car. "Dad, are we almost home?" Almost, sweetheart. Being a single father meant every day was a race against bills, against exhaustion. Against the fear of failing the one person who trusted me the most. That evening had been long, 12 hours of driving strangers through the city, listening to complaints. Watching wealthy people step out of my taxi into shining hotels while I counted coins for groceries. But Lily was smiling. That was enough for me. The rain began falling harder. Cold drops tapped on the windshield like restless fingers. Traffic lights reflected red and gold across the wet asphalt. Then my phone buzzed with one last ride request. A pickup outside a luxury charity gala. I almost ignored it. My body felt heavy with exhaustion, but school shoes for Lily were waiting on my mind, so I accepted the ride. The hotel looked like a palace of glass and marble. Men in tuxedos laughed beneath glowing chandeliers. Women stepped out of black cars wearing diamonds that probably cost more than my apartment. Then she appeared, tall, elegant. Her silver dress shimmered under the lights. People whispered her name as she walked past them. Alina Carter, the youngest billionaire heiress in Boston. I had seen her face in magazines while waiting in grocery store lines. She opened my taxi door and sat beside Lily. Her perfume smelled soft and expensive. But something about her breathing sounded wrong, too fast, too shallow. "Miss Carter, where to?" I asked gently. She tried to answer, but the words collapsed in her throat. Her hand grabbed the seat. Her face turned pale, her body slid sideways. Lily gasped. "Dad!" Alina Carter stopped breathing. For one frozen second, my mind went empty. Rain hammered the roof of the taxi. The city noise blurred into distant echoes. Then instinct took control. I jumped out of the driver's seat and pulled her carefully onto the back seat. Her lips were turning blue. My heart pounded violently in my chest. I had taken a first aid class years earlier for taxi drivers. The memory returned like lightning. Airway, breathing, circulation. I tilted her head back. Still no breath. Time felt like it was collapsing around us. I pressed my mouth to hers and gave a breath, then another. Her chest lifted slightly, but still she did not wake. Lily held Alina's hand with shaking fingers. "Please wake up," she whispered. I gave another breath, another. Then suddenly Alina coughed violently. Air rushed into her lungs. Her eyes opened in confusion. The world rushed back all at once. Sirens screamed somewhere in the distance. My hands were trembling. Alina looked at me, then at Lily. Then at the rain-soaked taxi ceiling. "You saved me," she whispered. Minutes later, an ambulance arrived. Doctors surrounded her with urgent voices and flashing lights. Before they lifted her stretcher into the ambulance, she grabbed my sleeve. Her eyes held something deeper than shock, gratitude, pure and powerful. "Tell me your name." "Daniel," I answered quietly. She nodded slowly, then the ambulance doors closed. I thought that was the end of the story. I drove Lily home. Life returned to its ordinary struggle. Morning alarms, school lunches. Long taxi shifts. 3 days passed, then something unbelievable happened. A long black limousine stopped in front of our small apartment building. Neighbors peeked through curtains. 2 men in expensive suits stepped out. They knocked on my door. Lily opened it first. Her eyes widened. "Dad!" Behind the men stood Alina Carter, alive, smiling, stronger than before. She stepped into our tiny living room. The place looked embarrassingly simple beside her elegance. Old sofa, small kitchen table, crayon drawings on the wall from Lily. Alina looked at those drawings longer than anything else. Then she turned to me. "You saved my life." Her voice trembled slightly. "I was born into wealth, Daniel." But that night I realized something important. She looked around the room again. I have spent years surrounded by people who admire money, but the man who saved me owns almost nothing. The room fell silent. Then she reached into her purse. I expected a check, maybe a reward. That would have already changed my life, but what she did next shocked everyone. She placed a small business folder on the table. Inside were documents, plans, contracts. "I am opening a citywide transportation company," she said calmly. "Ethical drivers, fair wages, health insurance for families." She pushed the folder toward me. "And I want you to run it." My breath caught in my throat. "Me. You," she said with certainty. The man who chose compassion over fear in a moment when no cameras were watching. Lily squeezed my arm. Tears filled her eyes. Alina knelt down to Lily's level. "Your father is a hero." Years passed after that moment. Our life changed in ways I never imagined. The company grew across the entire city. Hundreds of drivers found stable jobs. Families gained security, but Alina remained part of our lives in a quiet and sincere way, not as a distant billionaire, as a friend. Sometimes she visited our home just to drink tea and listen to Lily talk about school. One evening, Lily asked the question that made all of us laugh. "Miss Alina, why did you trust my dad with everything?" Alina smiled softly. Her answer stayed with me forever. "Because in the moment between life and death, money has no value. The only thing that matters is the kindness of a human heart." That night I looked at my daughter sleeping peacefully. And I understood something important. Life can change in a single breath. Sometimes the smallest act of courage becomes the bridge between two completely different worlds. Morning sunlight slowly filled our kitchen. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the small apartment. For a moment everything felt peaceful. But my mind still struggled to believe how life had changed. Just a few weeks earlier I had been driving strangers across the city for tips. Now people called me Mr. Daniel inside a company building with glass walls and shining floors. The transportation company grew faster than anyone expected. Drivers came from every corner of Boston, single mothers. Immigrants searching for honest work, older drivers who had been ignored by every other company. I remembered how hard my own life had been, so I made one promise to every employee: respect, fair pay, and dignity. Alina visited the office often, but she never acted like the owner of billions. She walked through the garage shaking hands with drivers. She asked about their children. She remembered their names. That alone shocked everyone. One cold evening the office lights glowed late into the night. Snow was falling outside. I sat at my desk reviewing schedules. Then Alina stepped into the room quietly. She looked different that night, not like the confident heiress people saw in magazines. Her expression carried something deeper, something personal. "Daniel," she said softly, "can we talk?" I nodded and closed the laptop. She sat across from me. For several seconds she said nothing. The silence felt heavy. Finally she spoke again. "The night in your taxi changed more than my life." Her fingers rested gently on the table. "I had everything before that night: money, fame, influence." She looked at me with honest eyes. "But I did not have purpose." Snowflakes touched the window glass outside, soft and quiet. Then she said something I never expected. "I grew up surrounded by bodyguards and advisors. Everyone protected my fortune, but no one cared about my heart." Her voice trembled slightly. "And then a tired single father saved my life while his little girl held my hand." The room felt very still. I felt uncomfortable hearing such powerful words. "I only did what any person should do," I answered. She shook her head slowly. "No, many people would have frozen. Many people would have waited for someone else. But you acted." She stood and walked toward the large window overlooking the snowy street. City lights shimmered across the white ground. "I have been thinking about something," she said quietly. Then she turned toward me again. "Daniel, our company is helping drivers, but the city still has thousands of struggling families." Her eyes carried determination now. "I want to build something bigger." She placed another folder on the table. This one was thicker. Inside were plans for community centers, free training programs, scholarships for drivers' children, affordable transportation for hospitals and elderly people. My heart raced while flipping through the pages. "This is enormous," I said slowly. "Yes," she replied. "And I want you beside me again." A deep emotion rose in my chest, not pride, responsibility, because every page of those plans carried hope for people like me, people who had once felt invisible. That winter our project began. Community centers opened in neighborhoods most investors avoided. Young drivers learned new skills. Children received school supplies. Families found stability. Every week someone shared a story of their life changing, but the most surprising change happened inside my own home. Lily grew close to Alina, very close. They painted together. They cooked messy dinners. They laughed like sisters even though their worlds had been completely different. One evening I walked into the living room and found them sitting on the floor surrounded by colored papers. "What are you two building?" I asked. Lily looked up with bright eyes. "A dream board," Alina laughed softly. "Your daughter believes everyone should draw their future before it happens." Lily held up a drawing. It showed three people standing together, a tall man, a little girl, and a woman with long hair. Above them was a big building with a heart symbol. "What does this mean?" I asked gently. Lily answered without hesitation. "It is our family helping people." The room became quiet. Alina stared at the drawing longer than anyone expected. Her eyes glistened under the warm light. That simple picture seemed to reach somewhere deep inside her soul. Weeks passed. Spring slowly replaced the winter snow. One afternoon, the company held a celebration for our first anniversary. Hundreds of drivers gathered in the main garage. Music played, people laughed, children ran between the parked cars. I stood on the stage feeling nervous. Public speaking had never been my strength. Then Alina stepped beside me holding a microphone. Her voice echoed through the garage. "Last year I almost lost my life." The crowd became silent immediately. But a man who had every reason to ignore me chose compassion. She looked toward me, and because of that moment, hundreds of families now have opportunity. Applause filled the air. But Alina raised her hand gently. "There is one more surprise today." Curiosity spread through the crowd. She turned toward me again, then toward Lily, who stood near the front row. And what Alina did next left every person in that garage completely stunned. Alina walked slowly down from the stage. The crowd parted to make space for her. Hundreds of eyes followed every step. She stopped in front of Lily. My daughter looked up at her with innocent curiosity. Alina knelt so they were face to face. Her voice softened. "Lily, do you remember the night in the taxi?" Lily nodded gently. "You held my hand when I could not breathe." Lily smiled shyly. "I was scared." Alina took a slow breath. "So was I." The garage remained completely silent. Drivers who normally joked loudly stood still like statues. Then Alina stood again and looked at the crowd. Her voice carried strength now. "That night a little girl reminded me what real courage looks like." She placed a small velvet box in Lily's hands. The crowd murmured in surprise. Lily looked at me nervously before opening it. Inside rested a delicate silver necklace shaped like a small heart, but that was not what shocked everyone. Alina turned back toward the stage microphone. "This necklace represents the first scholarship of the Carter Foundation." A giant screen behind the stage lit up with bright letters. The Lilly Grant program. Gasps spread through the room. Alina continued speaking. "Every year this program will support 1,000 children of hardworking drivers across the country." The room erupted with applause. Some drivers wiped tears from their eyes. Many of them had struggled for years to pay for their children's education. Lily stood frozen, holding the necklace carefully. "Me," she whispered. Alina smiled warmly. "Yes, you reminded me that kindness can come from the smallest hands." I felt something tighten in my chest, pride, gratitude. A strange feeling that life had just drawn a circle around us. After the celebration ended, people slowly returned home, but Alina asked Lily and me to stay a little longer. The huge garage became quiet again. Only a few lights remained on. We sat together on the stage steps. Lily swung her feet happily. Alina looked unusually thoughtful. There was something she still wanted to say. Finally, she turned toward me. "Daniel, there is something I have never told you." Her tone was serious. I listened carefully. "The night I collapsed in your taxi was not only exhaustion." She paused for a moment. "It was stress, pressure from my company board, investors who believed compassion had no place in business." She looked around the garage filled with our drivers' cars. "They told me helping people was bad for profit." Her eyes returned to mine. "But your life proved them wrong." I leaned forward slightly. "What do you mean?" Alina gave a small, thoughtful smile. "Tomorrow morning the board is coming here. Every one of them." I frowned with confusion. "To the garage?" "Yes." She stood and walked slowly toward the large doors where the city lights glowed outside. "They think this company is only a small charity experiment, but tomorrow they will see something different." The wind moved softly through the open doorway. Alina's voice carried quiet determination. "They will see hundreds of drivers with stable jobs. They will see families who are no longer afraid of rent. They will see children dreaming about college." She turned toward me again. "And I want you beside me when they arrive, because the man who saved my life is about to help save something even bigger." I felt a strange tension building inside my chest. "What if they try to shut everything down?" Alina's expression became calm. Then they will have to face the truth in front of everyone. Lily stood and took both our hands. Her small voice broke the serious moment. Dad, Alina, we will be okay. Children often understand life better than adults. That night we left the garage together. The air outside smelled fresh with spring, but none of us realized something important was already happening. Across the street, a group of men in dark suits stood beside a black car. They had been watching the entire celebration from the shadows. One of them spoke quietly into a phone. The driver is more influential than we expected. A pause followed. Then another voice answered through the speaker, cold, careful, tomorrow morning changes everything. The man closed the phone slowly. His eyes remained fixed on our building. Inside, the garage lights were still glowing softly, a place built from one desperate moment inside a rain-soaked taxi, and the real test of everything we had created was only hours away. The next morning arrived with a quiet golden sunrise. Boston looked calm, but inside the company garage the air felt heavy with expectation. Drivers gathered in small groups. Some wore their clean uniforms proudly, others stood with their families beside them. Children held balloons from the celebration the night before. Everyone sensed something important was about to happen. At exactly 9 o'clock, 3 long black cars rolled slowly into the parking lot. The engines stopped, doors opened. 6 men and 2 women stepped out wearing expensive suits and serious expressions. They were members of Alina's powerful corporate board, people who controlled billions of dollars. People who believed business should only follow profit. Whispers spread through the crowd. Alina stood calmly near the stage. I stood beside her. Lily held my hand tightly. The board members walked across the garage floor, their polished shoes echoing against the concrete. One tall man with gray hair stopped in front of Alina. His eyes moved across the drivers, the families, and the children. This, he said slowly, is the project you invested millions into. His tone carried doubt. Alina did not look offended. She simply nodded, yes. Another board member crossed his arms. A transportation company that pays drivers too much and spends money on scholarships and community centers. His voice sounded almost amused. That is not how empires are built. The drivers nearby shifted nervously. Some lowered their eyes. They feared this moment might destroy everything. Then Alina stepped forward and spoke calmly. You are correct about one thing. The board members listened carefully. This is not how old empires were built. She turned slightly and gestured toward the people around us. But this is how a better one begins. The tall gray-haired man shook his head. Sentiment does not impress investors. He pulled out a folder. We came today to review the numbers. The entire garage fell silent. Alina looked toward me. She gave a small nod. I walked to the stage and connected a tablet to the large screen behind us. Numbers filled the display. Charts, growth reports, customer ratings, profit margins. Gasps quietly spread through the room. The company had grown faster than any transportation startup in the city. Demand had doubled every month. Customers trusted drivers who were treated with dignity. Hospitals signed long-term service contracts. Schools partnered for safe student transportation. Investors had already begun requesting shares. The board members leaned closer to the screen. Their expressions slowly changed from doubt to surprise. The tall man removed his glasses and studied the numbers again. This is accurate. Yes, Alina answered calmly. Kindness turned out to be good business. For a long moment nobody spoke. Then one of the women on the board smiled slightly. Perhaps compassion was the smartest investment after all. A ripple of relieved laughter spread through the drivers. The tension melted away like ice under sunlight. The gray-haired man looked around the garage again. This time his eyes stayed longer on the families standing together. He slowly closed his folder. Well, he said quietly, I believe we misjudged this experiment. Then he extended his hand toward Alina. Congratulations. Applause erupted across the garage. Drivers cheered. Children jumped excitedly. Some people hugged each other in disbelief. Lily squeezed my hand with joy. Alina turned toward me and smiled. But instead of speaking to the board, she walked to the microphone and faced everyone. Her voice echoed warmly across the garage. 1 year ago, I collapsed in a taxi during the worst night of my life. She paused briefly. A single father saved me while his daughter held my hand. The room grew quiet again. That moment taught me something powerful. She looked across the crowd slowly. Success is not about how high you rise. It is about how many people you lift with you. Her eyes met mine for a second, then she looked toward Lily. And sometimes the greatest heroes are ordinary people who choose kindness when it matters most. The entire garage stood in applause. I felt overwhelmed with emotion, not pride, not fame. Something deeper, gratitude for a single moment that had changed everything. Later that evening, Lily and I drove home together. The same city streets passed by the taxi window. The same streetlights reflected on the pavement, but life felt different now, not because of money or success. Because one act of courage had created a chain of kindness that touched hundreds of lives. Lily looked out the window thoughtfully. "Dad, yes, sweetheart, do you think that night was luck?" I smiled gently while driving. "No, that night was a choice." She tilted her head with curiosity. "What kind of choice?" "The choice to care about someone else." She smiled softly and leaned back in her seat. The city lights faded behind us as we drove home. And in that quiet moment I understood something simple and true. A single act of compassion can travel farther than wealth, power, or fame. It can change strangers into friends. It can turn struggle into opportunity. It can transform one life into hope for many others. Moral lesson: true greatness does not come from money or status. True greatness comes from a kind heart that chooses to help another human being, even in the smallest moment. Because one moment of kindness can begin a story that changes the world. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it touched your heart, please share it and leave a comment below. Someone out there may need to hear this message today. Let them know one simple truth: you are never alone.